All right, let's talk about one of the most incredible and chilling paradoxes in modern history. It's a story about a group of brilliant people who saw the future with absolute clarity, told their leaders exactly what was coming, and were completely ignored. I mean, really, think about that for a second. What if you had a tool built not on magic, but on pure, cold, hard data, and it laid out for you, step by step, how you were going to fail? What would you do? And maybe more importantly, what happens when the people in charge just refuse to look? And that, right there, is the heart of this story. In the summer of 1941, the Japanese government had a report in its hands, a detailed, data-driven analysis that proved a war with the United States would end in total disaster. And just a few months later, they attacked Pearl Harbor anyway. Okay, let's get into how this could possibly happen.
To really get this, we have to start with the prediction itself. And look, this wasn't some vague prophecy from an oracle. This was a prophecy born from spreadsheets, from logistics tables, and from cold, hard numbers.
Yeah, the first shots of this story weren't fired from a cannon. They were fired in a conference room. The whole thing starts with a simple, terrifying question. Not how should we fight this war, but can we actually win a long war at all? So, who were these people who made this incredible prediction? Well, they were part of a brand new, top-secret organization, a kind of machine built for one purpose: to see the truth, clearly, without all the usual political nonsense. It was called the Total War Research Institute, and you got to understand, this was no small-time committee. It was created by imperial order. It reported directly to the prime minister. Its entire job was to figure out what a modern total war would really take, and to train the next generation of leaders to think bigger. And the team they put together? It was pretty revolutionary for the time. A true anti-silo group. They grabbed young, brilliant minds, the average age was just 33, from everywhere. The Army, the Navy, who, by the way, famously hated each other. Government officials, even people from the private sector. The whole idea was to force these different groups to actually talk to each other and share data for once. Their mission, and I love this description, was to be an antibody inside the government. They were there to fight the infection of wishful thinking, all that spirit will conquer all talk. Their job was to replace it with a brutal, honest look at what Japan could actually do in a major war. So, what happened when they started running the numbers? Well, the picture they got back wasn't just bad. It was apocalyptic. It showed a nation about to charge into a fight it had zero chance of winning in the long run. Let's just start with the most important thing for modern war: oil. For every 1 barrel of oil Japan could produce, the United States could produce 528. That's not a disadvantage. That's a checkmate before the game even starts. That one chart tells you almost everything you need to know. And it just went on like that, across the board. The U.S. economy? Almost 12 times bigger. Steel production, the backbone of any war machine? Over 12 times bigger. It didn't matter what they measured. When it came to a long, grinding war of attrition, Japan was just hopelessly, completely outmatched. So with all this data, the Institute ran a war game. And the results are just chillingly accurate. It predicted Japan would have stunning victories at the start, thanks to surprise. But then the war would become a slog, a battle of attrition. It predicted that America's industrial power would just slowly, inevitably overwhelm Japan. That submarines would sink their merchant fleet, choking them off from resources. And that, in the end, their national power would collapse, leading to defeat. They even predicted a Soviet attack in the final stages. They basically wrote the script for the entire Pacific War before a single shot was fired. So you have this undeniable, data-driven prophecy of doom. What happens when that prophecy slams into a leadership that's already made up its mind? Well, you get a massive collision of two completely different realities. On one side, you had the Institute's logic, right? War is a calculation of industrial power, and we lose that calculation, period. On the other side, you had the military's deeply held belief: war is a contest of will. Our Japanese spirit, our Yamato Damashi, can overcome any material disadvantage. It was pure logic versus pure belief.
And here's the moment it all came to a head. When the Institute presented its findings in August 1941, this was the response from Army Minister Tojo Hideki, the guy who would soon be Prime Minister. He didn't even argue with the data. He just dismissed it. He called it a desk exercise. And then he brings up the Russo-Japanese War from 40 years earlier, this almost mythical victory, as proof that spirit, not numbers, is what really wins wars.
And this gets us to the biggest question in this whole story. Why? Why did they ignore such a clear warning? Well, the answer isn't just one stubborn general. It was the whole system. An entire architecture of denial built to reject truths like this. So how does data-driven truth fail so badly? Well, it wasn't a bug in the system. In many ways, it was a feature. Let's break down how this architecture worked. First, you had a huge flaw in the Constitution itself. It was called Supreme Command Independence. And what it meant, basically, is that the military answered only to the emperor, not the civilian government. This created a dual state where the Army and Navy could basically hijack the country's foreign policy, and there was nothing the politicians could do about it.
Second, there was this incredible cultural pressure. Decisions weren't really made through open debate. They were made by sensing the air, this unspoken consensus in the room. By 1941, the air in Tokyo was thick with the feeling that war was the only option. To argue against it wasn't just seen as being wrong, it was seen as being a defeatist, almost a traitor.
So all this led to a completely broken way of making decisions. You see, those big formal meetings in front of the emperor, they weren't for debating anything. They were pure theater. The real decision was made informally, behind the scenes. Then data was cherry-picked just to justify that conclusion. And the formal meeting, that was just for the rubber stamp.
And here is the ultimate tragic irony. In a system like this, information, analysis, data, it doesn't work as a safety valve to stop you from making a huge mistake. Instead, it gets twisted. It becomes an accelerator, used to give everyone the false confidence to speed right towards the cliff.
Now, it's so easy for us to look back at history and judge, but the story of the Total War Research Institute, it isn't just about the past. It's a timeless cautionary tale. It's really a mirror for any large organization, even today. Because this is really about how organizations work. It's about what happens when the company culture and what everyone already believes is more powerful than objective reality. It forces us to ask a really tough question. How do we deal with uncomfortable facts in our own jobs, in our own lives?
So, I'll just leave you with this one question to think about. In your world, your team, your company, your community, is data treated like a compass, something you use to find the right path, even if it's a difficult one? Or is it just a decoration, something you use to make the path you've already decided to take look a little prettier? The answer matters, because as history shows us, sometimes it's the difference between success and total disaster.